The cultural and linguistic foundations of the Arikara people lie far to the south of their eventual Northern Plains homeland. They are rooted within the Caddoan linguistic family, a network of societies tracing its ancient lineage to the prehistoric mound-building cultures of the lower Mississippi River Valley. Centuries of population pressure and the continuous search for fertile agricultural land prompted a massive, multi-generational northward migration. By the year 1400, the ancestors of the Arikara and the Pawnee had settled heavily in present-day Nebraska. Through this migration, the Arikara became the northernmost Caddoan tribe. While culturally related to the Pawnee, their language evolved to be mutually unintelligible. They were linguistically isolated on the northern plains, surrounded by tribes speaking entirely different language families. Prior to the devastating impacts of European colonization, the Arikara, who call themselves the Sahnish, or the people, were a dominant semi-nomadic power. Boasting a population of 3,000 to 4,000 in the 1700s, they controlled a 100-mile stretch of the vital Missouri River corridor, their presence marked by sprawling, permanent villages perched on highly defensible bluffs. Arikara women were the primary architects, builders, and ultimate owners of the earth lodges. Men provided supplementary labor by felling and transporting massive cottonwood timber, often harvesting logs knocked down by violent spring ice flows. After the wood cured for a year, women wove willow and grasses over the framework, packing it with tons of insulating earth. The earth lodge was not merely a shelter, it was a physical manifestation of the Arikaree universe. The massive roof represented the dome of the sky and the heavens, while the circular outer wall symbolized the distant horizon of the earth. The four center posts corresponded to the four cardinal directions, associated with specific colors, animal spirits, and weather patterns. The eastern half, facing the rising sun, was the designated male domain. The western half, symbolized by the evening star, was the sacred female domain. Here rested the family's altar, sacred bundle, and the ears of Mother Corn, forever watching over the inhabitants. The absolute foundation of Arikara prosperity was agriculture. They were one of the few fully agricultural tribes of the plains. Arikara women completely controlled and managed these bountiful gardens. This immense agricultural surplus transformed their villages into the premier commercial hubs of the region. They traded crops to non-farming neighbors in exchange for buffalo meat, hides, and later European trade goods. This economic leverage allowed the sedentary Arikara to balance regional power against mathematically superior equestrian forces. Corn was so essential that it transcended mere sustenance to become a central religious deity, Mother Corn. As the divine intermediary for the supreme deity Nishanu, Mother Corn led the Sahnish from the underworld, taught them agriculture and hunting, and instituted the complex religious ceremonies involving spirit guardians and sacred bundles. In every Arikara lodge, an ear of corn represented her physical presence, guiding the people in ethical behavior. During the Mother Corn ceremony, a massive world renewal ritual, a native cedar tree symbolized her presence, illustrating the deep interconnectedness of all flora within the Arikara worldview. The arrival of Europeans, beginning with French explorers in the early 1700s, brought an invisible, microscopic invader to which indigenous populations possessed zero natural immunity. When the Lewis and Clark expedition arrived in October 1804, they documented the chilling sight of numerous abandoned Arikara villages. Beginning around 1782, the first in a series of devastating smallpox epidemics swept the Missouri River Valley. The sudden, agonizing death of thousands decimated the population, severely disrupted the transmission of traditional knowledge, and thrust the survivors into destructive internal factionalism. Compounding this tragedy was a severe diplomatic blunder. In 1806, prominent Arikara leader Onkaduchiro traveled to Washington, D.C. to meet President Thomas Jefferson, but tragically fell ill and died in Richmond, Virginia. The Americans failed to provide a satisfactory explanation for his death, engendering a profound, lingering resentment that set the stage for open warfare. By the early 2020s, the Arikara were deeply frustrated. Their longtime enemies, the Sioux, enjoyed direct access to American trading posts, ensuring a steady supply of weapons. The Arikaree did not. American fur trader General William H. Ashley had promised the Arikara a direct trading pipeline, but failed to deliver. On May 30, 1823, Ashley arrived not to trade but to buy horses to supply his partners farther upriver, bypassing the Arikara to arm rival tribes. In response, on the early morning of June 2nd, Arikara warriors launched a devastating surprise attack. Using muskets Ashley had previously traded to them, the Arikara killed 20 American trappers and wounded 9 in mere minutes. The survivors scrambled on board their boats, severed the lines, and fled downstream in total defeat. The U.S. response marked the first battle fought between the United States Army and an indigenous nation west of the Mississippi River. In August, Colonel Henry Leavenworth arrived with troops, artillery, and 800 Teton Dakota warriors. The Dakota abandoned the fight early, frustrated by the Army's timid tactics. Left to rely on artillery, Leavenworth bombarded the villages but failed to breach the defenses.
While Leavenworth attempted to negotiate, the cunning Arikara leadership utilized the cover of darkness. The entire population escaped into the night, leaving the Americans to find only empty lodges. The campaign demonstrated to all Plains tribes that the Great Father soldiers were not invincible. Following the burning of their villages and another apocalyptic smallpox epidemic in 1837, the surviving Arikara made a drastic calculation. They allied with the United States military to avoid total annihilation by the Sioux Confederacy. This pragmatic alliance is embodied by Bloody Knife, arguably the most famous Native American scout to serve the U.S. Army. Born around 1840 to a Hunkapapa Sioux father and an Arikara mother, Bloody Knife was brutally abused by the Sioux during his childhood, particularly by a boy who would become Chief Gall. Fleeing to the Arikara, Bloody Knife's hatred became permanent when Gall led an 1862 raid that slaughtered his brothers. Bloody Knife became Custer's absolute favorite scout. Recognizing his supreme tactical value, Custer secured Bloody Knife a staggering $75 per month as a guide, far exceeding the standard $13 for Indian scouts. At the Battle of the Little Bighorn, Bloody Knife's desperate warnings about the unprecedented size of the Sioux forces were fatally ignored. Fighting in the timber beside Major Marcus Reno, Bloody Knife was struck squarely in the forehead by a volley from warriors led by his lifelong enemy, Gall. His gruesome death triggered Reno's panicked retreat. Bloody Knife was decapitated, his head paraded on a lance through the victorious Hunkapapa village. He was one of 6 scouts to die that day, alongside fellow Arikaras Bobtail Bull and Little Brave. In a tragic coda, his widow spent 5 years fighting federal bureaucracy just to claim his final $91 in wages. The relentless dual pressures of imported disease and endless warfare forced the Arikara to permanently abandon their tradition of fiercely independent villages. Following the 1837 smallpox outbreak, the Mandan and Hidatsa survivors merged to establish Like a Fishhook village in 1845. Recognizing the impossibility of standing alone, the Arikara joined them in 1856. This pragmatic merger marked the genesis of the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara Nation, the 3 affiliated tribes. In 1851, the Treaty of Fort Laramie recognized a 12 million-acre territory for the MHA Nation. However, through executive orders and the devastating General Allotment Act, the government systematically dismantled this holding. In 1886, the tribes were forced under duress to sign away 1.6 million acres. Stripped of their collective wealth and expected to assume a philosophy of extreme individualism, the Sahnish were pushed into deep poverty on fragmented plots of dirt. By the mid-20th century, the 3 affiliated tribes had miraculously managed to reconstruct a thriving, self-sufficient agrarian economy in the rich, forested bottomlands of the Missouri River Valley. But the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers' Pick Sloan Missouri Basin program targeted the very heart of the Fort Berthold Reservation to build the Garrison Dam. The government intentionally targeted native lands because tribal nations possessed the least political power to resist, a textbook example of environmental racism. The resulting Lake Sakakawea permanently drowned over 150,000 acres of the reservation's most fertile land, obliterating 9 distinct communities, schools, and the hospital. Over 90% of the native population was forcibly uprooted to the harsh, barren prairie toplands. Right now, the future does not look so good to us, Gillette wept. Our tribal constitution are being torn to shreds. The forced shift from traditional subsistence farming to government commodity foods plunged the population into an ongoing public health crisis, resulting in diabetes rates more than double the national average. Today, there are over 12,000 enrolled members of the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara Nation. While the Arikara language is critically endangered with fewer than a dozen semi-fluent elders remaining, the community is fighting back. The tribe has fully embraced modern technology, partnering with linguists to create interactive multimedia dictionaries and mobile learning apps for Apple devices. They are subtly injecting the Arikara language into digital spaces, establishing a robust framework for a new generation of speakers. Parallel to the linguistic revival is the heartbeat of the earth, the drum. Revered as a living spiritual entity, the drum dictates the rhythm of the community. Traditionally, men strike the drum while women sing an octave higher behind them, creating an unparalleled harmonic dimension that carries prayers into the universe. Each July, the Arikara celebration brings the community together, honoring their deep historical relationship with the Pawnee and ensuring ancient traditions survive. Despite centuries of disease, warfare, and federal displacement, the Sahnish people continue to assert their identity, proving that the heartbeat of their nation remains as strong and enduring as the drum itself.